Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Up. I'm Ryan, and I'm really happy to have you here today. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a regular listener, it's great to see you. Today, we're talking about something that might surprise you, the ways you might be learning English that aren't really working. We all want to learn English fast, but sometimes our study habits can hold us back without us even noticing. In this episode, we're going to go through 9 clear red flags that show you might be on the wrong track with your English learning. I'll be sharing some practical insights and easy tips that can help you improve English fluency. We're not going to overwhelm you with complicated ideas. Instead, I'll explain everything in a way that's simple and easy to follow. Imagine if you could avoid the mistakes that many learners make and find smarter, more effective ways to practice every day. Today, we'll point out what to look for and offer fresh ideas to help you build better habits. So, sit back, relax, and let's get started on a journey that might just change the way you learn English.
Hi everyone, I'm Priya, and I'm really excited to jump into this conversation with you. Let me ask you something. Do you ever wonder if the methods you're using are really helping you get better at speaking English? It's easy to get caught up in routines that feel productive, but sometimes they might actually be slowing you down. Today, I want to share some English-speaking tips that have worked wonders for many learners. We'll cover 9 red flags, those warning signs that tell you when your study habits might need a little tweaking. I promise it's not about being hard on yourself. It's about learning and growing. Whether you're practicing in a classroom or at home, small changes can make a big difference. I'll be talking about simple steps you can take to boost your confidence and speak more naturally. Together with Ryan, we'll break down each red flag in clear, easy language so you can start making improvements right away. So, get ready to discover some unexpected tips that could transform your daily practice. Let's dive into this journey and uncover how you can speak more fluently and naturally without any extra hassle.
Let's start with our first red flag: irregular practice. Imagine trying to build a house but only working on it once in a while. Your progress would be slow and unstable. When your study sessions are sporadic, you miss out on the cumulative benefits of daily exposure to the language. For instance, if you only engage with English through a few scattered sessions of English listening practice or occasional chats, you won't develop the strong foundation needed to truly advance. Consistent effort is what transforms short bursts of learning into long-lasting skills. Dedicating specific times for activities like daily English conversation can help lock in new vocabulary and grammar, making the language feel more natural over time. By sticking to a regular routine, you set yourself up for faster, more confident progress on your journey to speak English fluently.
I completely agree, Ryan. Consider how much more effective it is when you practice every day rather than waiting for the perfect moment. When you incorporate regular sessions into your schedule, even if they're brief, your brain adapts and starts to retain information more efficiently. It's like exercising a muscle. The more consistently you work it, the stronger it gets. Relying on sporadic study habits can leave gaps in your knowledge and make it difficult to remember what you've learned. By contrast, setting aside time for focused English listening practice or engaging in daily English conversation not only reinforces your learning, but also builds a natural rhythm. This steady pattern helps you internalize the language, making your interactions feel smoother and boosting your overall confidence. Regular practice really is the secret sauce for improving fluency and truly making English a part of your daily life.
Building on that idea, it's important to highlight how routine practice accelerates your learning process. When you commit to a consistent schedule, your brain gradually shifts from struggling to recall isolated bits of information to naturally processing entire conversations. This method reduces the need to constantly relearn material, enabling you to focus on expanding your vocabulary and perfecting pronunciation. Think about how a daily habit, like dedicating time for English listening practice, can enhance your ability to pick up nuances in conversation and understand native speakers more clearly. Moreover, incorporating short yet regular sessions of daily English conversation helps reinforce what you learn and makes it easier to apply during real interactions. This steady approach not only solidifies your existing knowledge, but also builds a strong base for future learning, ensuring that every session contributes to your overall growth in a meaningful way.
Exactly, Ryan. Consistency is key to transforming occasional effort into lasting ability. When you schedule regular practice, whether it's through engaging in daily English conversation or setting aside time for English listening practice, you create an environment where learning becomes a natural part of your day. This habitual approach reduces the frustration of trying to recall information learned in sporadic bursts and builds a seamless connection between what you study and how you use it. Over time, these small, steady steps result in improved fluency and a more intuitive grasp of the language. You begin to notice that the more you practice consistently, the less effort it takes to communicate effectively. In essence, regular practice turns language learning into a habit rather than a chore, making your journey smoother and more enjoyable. So, if you're aiming to boost your progress, embracing a daily routine is one of the most powerful tools you can use.
All right, let's move on to our next red flag: over-reliance on grammar drills. Picture this. You might be spending hours with materials like English Grammar Made Easy, drilling rules and practicing exercises. But when it comes time to hold a natural conversation, you find yourself hesitating or making mistakes. Focusing too much on grammar exercises is like studying the map without ever taking the journey. You learn all the rules in theory, but without putting them into practice in everyday situations, those rules don't stick as well as they should. This method can leave you knowing the theory perfectly on paper, yet struggling with practical use. The gap between memorizing grammar and applying it in real conversations can lead to persistent errors. Imagine knowing every rule in a textbook, but then stumbling over your words when you try to speak freely. That's why it's so important to balance structured learning with practical application. Mixing in real-life interactions like joining daily English conversations or engaging in English listening practice can help you internalize the rules much better. When you combine your study of grammar with active communication, you not only reinforce what you learn, but also make it easier to recall those rules when needed. In short, while grammar drills are helpful, they should be just one part of a varied learning approach, ensuring you truly master the language in every context.
Exactly, Ryan. Let's dig a little deeper into this issue. Relying solely on grammar drills can create a scenario where you're well-versed in rules but unable to adapt them naturally in conversation. It's like learning all the ingredients for a recipe but never actually cooking a meal. Your knowledge remains theoretical. When you only work with exercises, you might end up with a rigid understanding of the language that doesn't allow for the fluidity needed in real-world conversations. Without practice, the language stays confined to the pages of a book rather than coming alive during interactions. This approach can lead to mistakes that keep popping up because your brain isn't used to thinking in English spontaneously. What we really need is a mix of structured study and practical, everyday usage. Incorporating interactive methods such as joining discussion groups or using language apps that simulate real conversations can be a game changer. By doing so, you start to fix those persistent grammar mistakes as you learn to adapt the rules in context. Remember, the goal is to become comfortable and confident in your speech, and that comes from using English in a variety of settings. So, while grammar drills provide a strong foundation, it's essential to step out of that comfort zone and test your skills in real-life situations.
Building on that, it's crucial to understand that language learning isn't just about knowing rules. It's about making them work for you in everyday communication. When you limit yourself to repetitive grammar drills, you're not giving your brain the chance to practice adapting those rules to different situations. Think about it like learning to ride a bicycle. You can study the mechanics all day, but until you get out there and ride, you're not going to build balance or confidence. The same applies to English. By immersing yourself in real conversations, whether through online exchanges, speaking clubs, or even simple practice with friends, you start to see how the grammar rules fit into natural speech. This approach not only helps you remember what you've learned, but also allows you to notice patterns and exceptions in a way that drills never can. Plus, Applying grammar in context helps you become more flexible in your thinking, enabling you to handle unexpected questions or changes in conversation with ease. So, while structured exercises are important, pairing them with real-world practice is key to transforming your theoretical knowledge into practical ability. This balanced method can really help you speak more naturally and confidently, reducing the chances of repeating the same mistakes over and over.
Absolutely, Ryan. It's all about creating that perfect blend between theory and practice. When you rely too heavily on grammar drills without actively using the language, you risk missing out on the nuances that make English dynamic and alive. For instance, even if you know every rule by heart, real-life conversations often throw in slang, idioms, or informal structures that you won't find in a textbook. By engaging in activities like English listening practice or spontaneous daily English conversation, you expose yourself to these natural variations, which helps you adjust your understanding in real time. This exposure not only fixes recurring grammar mistakes, but also builds your overall fluency and adaptability. It's important to challenge yourself with situations that force you to think on your feet rather than simply recalling memorized rules. In doing so, you start to understand how grammar fits into the rhythm of natural speech, making you more confident and less self-conscious about making errors. Embracing a variety of learning experiences, beyond just grammar drills, helps you see the bigger picture of language use. This balanced approach empowers you to move past rigid learning habits, allowing you to communicate more effectively and enjoyably in everyday scenarios.
All right, moving on to our next red flag: rote memorization without context. Picture this: you're spending hours memorizing lists of vocabulary from textbooks or apps without ever seeing those words used in real conversations. It's like learning the names of ingredients without ever tasting the dish. You might know what they are, but you won't know how they work together. When you focus solely on memorizing words or phrases in isolation, you miss out on understanding their true meaning and proper usage. This approach leaves you with a toolbox full of words that you're not entirely sure how to use when speaking naturally. Instead, it's much more effective to incorporate strategies that connect new vocabulary with everyday situations. For example, using an English vocabulary builder can be a game changer. This type of tool not only introduces you to new words, but also shows you how they fit into sentences and common expressions. By coupling this with practical tips to memorize English words in context, like writing your own sentences or engaging in dialogues, you create a deeper understanding of the language. This shift from passive memorization to active usage is what really helps in transforming those words into tools for real communication. It's all about making sure that every new word you learn has a place in your everyday language, so you're prepared when the moment comes to use it naturally. All right, moving on to our next red flag: rote memorization without context. Picture this: you're spending hours memorizing lists of vocabulary from textbooks or apps without ever seeing those words used in real conversations. It's like learning the names of ingredients without ever tasting the dish. You might know what they are, but you won't know how they work together. When you focus solely on memorizing words or phrases in isolation, you miss out on understanding their true meaning and proper usage. This approach leaves you with a toolbox full of words that you're not entirely sure how to use when speaking naturally. Instead, it's much more effective to incorporate strategies that connect new vocabulary with everyday situations. For example, using an English vocabulary builder can be a game changer. This type of tool not only introduces you to new words, but also shows you how they fit into sentences and common expressions. By coupling this with practical tips to memorize English words in context, like writing your own sentences or engaging in dialogues, you create a deeper understanding of the language. This shift from passive memorization to active usage is what really helps in transforming those words into tools for real communication. It's all about making sure that every new word you learn has a place in your everyday language, so you're prepared when the moment comes to use it naturally. Building on that, let's explore how integrating context into your vocabulary learning routine can really transform your language skills. When you simply memorize words without seeing them in action, you're likely to forget them or misuse them in conversation. This is because language isn't just a list of definitions. It's a living, breathing mode of communication. To really grasp a new word, you need to understand the situations in which it naturally appears, its connotations, and even its subtle differences when used alongside other words. One effective method is to use an English vocabulary builder that not only lists words, but also provides sentences and scenarios for each term. By doing this, you engage with the language in a way that simulates real conversations. Pair this approach with practical tips to memorize English words, such as creating flashcards that include example sentences or practicing with language partners, and you have a winning combination. This strategy helps you move from mere recognition to active usage. You'll find that words you once struggled to remember become second nature as they're woven into your daily interactions. Ultimately, embedding context into your study habits bridges the gap between theory and practice, leading to more natural and confident communication.
I completely agree, Ryan. The key takeaway here is that vocabulary isn't just about quantity, it's about quality and usability. When you learn words in a vacuum, you risk having a limited understanding of how they work in the flow of conversation. On the other hand, when you adopt methods that tie each word to a practical example, you build a richer, more dynamic command of English. For instance, try to use new words in sentences that relate to your daily life. Engage with resources that illustrate words in context, like stories, dialogues, or interactive apps that serve as an English vocabulary builder. This way, you can see firsthand how language functions in different scenarios. Also, consider using tips to memorize English words that encourage you to write down sentences or discuss topics where you can apply new vocabulary. This active approach not only reinforces your memory, but also sharpens your ability to retrieve and use these words when needed. Embracing contextual learning transforms isolated vocabulary into powerful tools for expression, helping you communicate more naturally and effectively. By shifting your focus from rote memorization to contextual understanding, you set the stage for a more fluent and engaging language experience.
Let's dive into our next red flag: avoiding real-life speaking practice. Many learners tend to stick with what feels safe, reading, writing, or practicing with language apps, while avoiding actual conversations. This habit might make you feel secure, but it leads to stagnation in your speaking skills. Without engaging in spontaneous dialogue, you're missing the chance to apply everything you've learned in a natural setting. When you focus solely on theoretical practice, like working through exercises or repeating phrases from a textbook, you're not really preparing for the unpredictable flow of everyday conversation. Imagine practicing a sport by only watching videos instead of actually playing. It just doesn't build the muscle memory or confidence you need. Real-life conversations allow you to experience the true rhythm of the language, adjust to various accents, and handle unexpected questions. It's this kind of practice that really transforms your learning and helps you speak English confidently. By stepping out of your comfort zone and engaging in genuine dialogue, you can break through the barriers that hold you back and build a more natural, fluent communication style.
I completely agree, Ryan. I used to avoid joining group discussions or casual chats because I was so focused on perfecting my grammar and vocabulary. But that approach quickly showed its limits when I tried speaking with native speakers. Real-life speaking practice is essential because it forces you to think on your feet and adapt to the flow of conversation. When you participate in daily English conversation or any spontaneous discussion, you learn how to use expressions and idioms naturally, far beyond what any textbook can teach. This kind of practice is what really builds confidence. Each conversation is like a mini rehearsal for real-world interactions. The more you speak, the more comfortable you become with making mistakes and learning from them in real time. Plus, it's in these unscripted moments that you pick up on the nuances of tone, pace, and even cultural references. By embracing real conversations, you not only overcome hesitation, but also develop a more fluid command of the language. It's a proactive way to transform all those study hours into meaningful, practical skills that make everyday communication smoother and more enjoyable.
Expanding on that, think about how avoiding real-life practice can leave you stuck in a loop of rehearsed and rigid responses. Without the chance to experiment in real conversations, your language skills remain theoretical. When you do interact in real time, every conversation challenges you to adjust your speech, respond to unexpected comments, and even improvise when you don't know the perfect word. This active engagement builds your linguistic intuition and quick thinking abilities. For example, joining a local English club or simply chatting with friends in English can expose you to a variety of speaking styles and expressions. It's through these interactions that you learn to naturally incorporate English-speaking tips and adapt your language to suit different contexts. Real-life practice also helps you recognize which phrases work best in a conversation and which might be too formal or out of place. Over time, this not only reduces the fear of speaking, but also empowers you to handle diverse topics with ease. Consistent engagement in conversations is one of the most effective ways to bridge the gap between classroom knowledge and genuine fluency.
Absolutely, Ryan. Real-life interactions are the secret ingredient for turning your language skills from mere knowledge into active, confident communication. When you actively participate in conversations, you learn how to adjust your tone, pick up on social cues, and even clarify your thoughts on the fly. This process is far more dynamic than practicing alone, where you might stick to scripted dialogues that never truly capture the spontaneity of real speech. By putting yourself in situations where you have to speak without preparation, you gradually build the resilience and adaptability that are essential for fluent communication. Engaging in everyday conversations not only hones your pronunciation and accent, but also helps you absorb natural speech patterns and colloquial expressions that textbooks often miss. This exposure makes you more comfortable and less self-conscious, so you can truly speak English confidently in any setting. Embracing real-life speaking opportunities transforms your learning experience, turning each conversation into a step towards more natural and effective communication.
Now, let's talk about another big hurdle, the fear of making mistakes. Many of us freeze up because we worry about saying something wrong. This fear can stop you from trying at all, and that's a major barrier to progress. When you're so focused on avoiding errors, you miss out on the chance to learn from them. It's like standing still instead of taking a step forward. This mindset is one of the most common red flags in language learning. I know how daunting it can feel when every mispronunciation or grammatical slip seems like a huge setback. But remember, mistakes are not failures. They're stepping stones to improvement. A useful approach is to remind yourself that every error is a lesson. Instead of shying away, embrace every conversation as a chance to refine your skills. Strategies to overcome fear of speaking English include practicing in low-pressure settings, such as speaking with a friend or joining a small discussion group. Also, try using methods that help you how to speak English without hesitation, like setting small, achievable goals for each conversation. By gradually exposing yourself to real-life speaking situations, you'll begin to see mistakes as natural parts of the learning process rather than as indicators of failure. This shift in mindset can be incredibly empowering and will ultimately lead you to speak with greater fluency and confidence.
I completely relate to that, Ryan. When I first started learning, I used to get anxious at the mere thought of speaking, worrying every time that a mistake would ruin the conversation. This fear can really hold you back from enjoying the learning process. It's important to understand that making errors is part of the journey toward mastery. Instead of letting the fear paralyze you, try to view each conversation as a safe space to experiment. One practical tip is to record yourself speaking and listen back. It might sound odd at first, but you'll quickly notice that your mistakes are minor and can be corrected with practice. Moreover, joining a supportive community where everyone is learning together can make a huge difference. Such groups encourage you to speak freely, and you'll soon see that others are making similar mistakes. These interactions help build resilience and teach you that errors are simply part of learning a new language. Embracing these moments rather than avoiding them will slowly erase the fear that holds you back. Over time, you'll find yourself speaking more naturally and with fewer hesitations, as your confidence grows with every conversation.
Building on that idea, it's essential to actively work on diminishing the fear of making mistakes by adopting a growth mindset. Instead of aiming for perfection right away, focus on progress and improvement. One effective method is to set realistic expectations for each conversation. Start with short chats, where the primary goal is to express your thoughts rather than to speak flawlessly. Over time, you can gradually increase the complexity of your discussions. Another useful strategy is to simulate real-life scenarios in a relaxed environment. For instance, role-playing common situations or practicing with language exchange partners can offer a more forgiving space to learn from errors. Additionally, having a mentor or teacher who provides constructive feedback can help you see mistakes as opportunities to learn rather than as reasons to stop trying. Tools and techniques that encourage you to overcome fear of speaking English can transform your approach, making every mistake a stepping stone toward fluency. Remember, the ultimate aim is to communicate effectively, and that comes from continual practice and learning from every slip-up. So, celebrate your progress no matter how small, and gradually, you'll find that the fear of errors diminishes, paving the way to speak with ease and spontaneity.
Absolutely, Ryan. Another powerful tip is to change the way you view your mistakes. Instead of considering them as setbacks, see them as vital feedback that guides you towards improvement. It might help to keep a small journal where you jot down the common errors you notice over time and then work on them. Reflecting on your progress, even if it's just noticing that you made a mistake and corrected it in the same conversation, can be incredibly motivating. Additionally, using positive affirmations before engaging in conversation can set a constructive tone. Tell yourself, "I'm here to learn, and every mistake is a chance to grow." This mindset not only builds your resilience, but also shifts your focus from fear to learning. Engage in practices that emphasize natural speaking, such as casual chats with friends or participating in group discussions where everyone is learning together. Over time, these interactions will help you speak English without hesitation. Embracing a community that supports learning and understanding that even native speakers make errors can significantly ease your anxiety. The key is to keep moving forward, step by step, and trust that every conversation, no matter how imperfect, is a leap toward greater fluency and confidence.
Let's move on to our next red flag: constantly translating in your head. When you find yourself pausing to mentally convert every word from your native language into English, you're slowing down your ability to think and speak naturally. It's like having an extra step in your communication process, which makes your responses delayed and often less fluid. This habit stops you from developing the quick, instinctive reaction needed for smooth conversations. Instead of processing ideas directly in English, your brain gets caught up in translation, which can lead to miscommunication and frustration. One effective approach is to immerse yourself in English as much as possible. For example, try to describe your surroundings or narrate your actions in English right in the moment. This practice helps you form sentences directly without a detour through your first language. There's also a great tip on how to stop translating in your head. Challenge yourself to think in English during daily activities like cooking, commuting, or even while shopping. Over time, these habits train your brain to bypass translation, making your conversations more spontaneous and confident. Remember, the goal is to build an environment where English is the default language of thought, reducing the extra mental work and paving the way for faster, more natural communication.
I totally relate to that, Ryan. I used to catch myself translating everything in my mind before speaking, and it really disrupted the flow of my conversations. It felt like I was carrying a mental translator with me at all times, and that made simple interactions much more challenging. One thing that helped me was to force myself to think in English, even if it meant starting with very simple sentences. I began by labeling objects around me and describing my routine directly in English without going back to my native language. This small change made a huge difference. Another tip that I found really useful is to practice speaking aloud while thinking in English, so you get used to forming your thoughts in the language you want to master. It's not easy at first, but with persistence, your brain starts to adapt. Also, interacting in English forums or listening to English podcasts can reinforce the habit of thinking directly in the language. The more you expose yourself to English, the quicker you'll learn to form thoughts without translating. Shift your mindset, embrace these practices, and watch your fluency improve naturally.
Adding to what Priya mentioned, another powerful strategy is to create dedicated time blocks during your day where only English is allowed, both in speech and in thought. This might mean setting aside a few minutes to describe your plans for the day or recounting events in English as you go about your routine. Over time, these sessions help establish a direct connection between your thoughts and the language, eliminating the intermediate translation step. Engaging with interactive content is also beneficial. For instance, try joining an online chat or discussion group where everyone communicates in English. These environments force you to think quickly and directly, sharpening your ability to form responses without second-guessing every word. The goal here is to build confidence so that you can respond spontaneously, just like a native speaker would. This practice not only speeds up your thinking process, but also builds a more authentic grasp of the language. Remember, the more you practice thinking in English, the more natural it will become, and soon you'll find that speaking effortlessly is within your reach.
Absolutely, Ryan. I've found that writing in English can also be a great exercise to stop translating in your head. Keeping a daily journal where you jot down your thoughts directly in English forces you to use the language naturally without relying on your native language as a crutch. This method not only improves your writing skills, but also helps your brain become accustomed to forming ideas in English. Another helpful tip is to challenge yourself with mental exercises, like visualizing a scenario and then describing it internally in English. These practices gradually build your confidence and reduce the habit of word-for-word translation. Over time, as you become more comfortable with thinking directly in English, you'll notice a significant improvement in how quickly and clearly you can express yourself. The key is to create a learning environment where English is your primary mode of communication, both in your head and out loud. Embracing these techniques can really smooth out your learning process, making each conversation feel more natural and less forced. Keep practicing, and soon, you'll find that thinking in English becomes second nature, paving the way for even greater fluency and ease in your communication.
Let's talk about another critical red flag: limited listening practice. When you don't regularly expose yourself to natural spoken English, it's much harder to pick up on the rhythm, tone, and nuances that are essential for understanding native speakers. Without enough exposure through English listening exercises, you may find that your ability to comprehend different accents and colloquial phrases is significantly hindered. Think about it this way. If you only read or write in English but never really listen to it, you're missing out on a huge part of the learning process. Listening helps you absorb intonation and pronunciation, which in turn makes your own speaking sound more natural. When you lack consistent listening practice, even if you know the grammar and vocabulary, you might struggle to follow conversations or feel comfortable when interacting with native speakers. This gap in practice not only affects your comprehension, but can also lead to misinterpretations or a failure to catch important details in a conversation. Making time for regular listening sessions, whether through podcasts, TV shows, or conversations with fluent speakers, is key to bridging that gap. By integrating these exercises into your daily routine, you'll find that you start to understand not just the words, but also the feelings and expressions behind them.
I completely agree, Ryan. It's so important to see listening as a cornerstone of language learning. Many learners underestimate the power of simply hearing the language in its natural flow. When you listen regularly, you're training your ear to pick up on subtle differences in pronunciation and the natural pace of speech. For instance, by engaging in English listening exercises every day, like listening to your favorite English podcast or watching a short segment of a TV show, you begin to recognize common phrases, idioms, and even regional accents. This practice is invaluable because it also boosts your confidence when you eventually speak. Without enough listening practice, you might find yourself struggling to respond in real time during conversations or feeling unsure when someone uses slang or idiomatic expressions. Regular listening not only improves your comprehension, but also helps you internalize the flow of language. This, in turn, makes it much easier to mimic native speakers and develop a more authentic accent. It's about creating an environment where English feels natural and accessible so that you can effortlessly understand and interact with native speakers in various real-life contexts.
Taking that further, one of the biggest challenges in language learning is that listening skills are often overlooked in favor of reading and writing. However, if you don't work on your listening, you're likely to miss out on the subtle cues that indicate meaning, emotion, or even humor. For example, a simple change in tone can transform a sentence from a statement into a question or reveal sarcasm that wouldn't be evident in written text. Regular English listening exercises help train your ear to these cues and enhance your overall communication skills. Whether it's listening to music, watching news segments, or participating in online conversations, each method exposes you to different accents and speaking styles. This variety not only enriches your vocabulary, but also prepares you for real-life interactions where speakers may have different rhythms and pronunciations. By making listening a consistent part of your learning schedule, you're not just practicing the language. You're experiencing it as it's naturally spoken. This exposure is crucial for developing the ability to quickly and accurately understand native speakers, which is a key component of fluency.
Absolutely, Ryan. I've noticed that many learners get comfortable with structured exercises like grammar drills or vocabulary lists. But when it comes to actual listening practice, they often fall short. This gap can create a disconnect between what you know on paper and what you can comprehend in real conversations. To overcome this, try to incorporate diverse listening activities into your daily routine. For instance, set aside some time each day to listen to a short English podcast or watch a scene from a movie without subtitles. Over time, this practice will help you tune into the natural flow of language and improve your ability to understand different accents and speech speeds. It's also a great idea to join online groups or language exchange sessions where you can listen and interact with native speakers. This not only improves your listening skills, but also gives you the opportunity to ask questions and clarify any doubts on the spot. By consistently engaging in these practices, you're likely to notice a significant boost in your comprehension and a smoother transition to fluent conversation. Remember, the key is to make listening an active part of your learning process so that understanding native English speakers becomes second nature.
Let's dive into our next red flag: sticking to a single learning method. Many learners tend to rely on one resource or method, thinking that what worked initially will always work. However, this approach can actually hold you back. Imagine eating the same meal every day. Eventually, you miss out on a variety of flavors and essential nutrients. In language learning, using only one resource, whether it's an old textbook or a single app, limits your exposure to the full spectrum of the language. When you depend on just one tool, you risk missing out on modern usage, interactive techniques, and fresh vocabulary. It's important to diversify your approach. Explore tools like the best apps to learn English, which are regularly updated and offer interactive challenges, or tap into free English learning resources that provide a broad range of materials. You can also try learning English with movies or Netflix to get accustomed to natural dialogue and colloquial expressions. By mixing these resources, you enrich your learning experience, build a well-rounded skill set, and keep your study sessions engaging. Embracing variety not only boosts your motivation, but also better prepares you for the diverse ways English is used in everyday life.
I completely agree, Ryan. It's really common to see learners sticking to one familiar method, even when it no longer serves them well. Relying solely on one resource can lead to a narrow view of the language and outdated practices. For instance, if you're only using one grammar book or a single app, you might miss out on interactive activities that build real-life conversation skills. The world of English learning is vast and ever-evolving, so it's essential to mix things up. Consider incorporating varied methods like watching engaging English shows on Netflix, which exposes you to everyday dialogue and cultural nuances, or exploring free English learning resources online for a fresh perspective. Tools like the best apps to learn English can offer structured, gamified experiences that keep you motivated while challenging different areas of your language ability. This variety not only breaks the monotony, but also ensures you're learning in a balanced way, improving vocabulary, pronunciation, and listening skills simultaneously. By broadening your horizons, you open yourself up to new techniques that can make your learning process more dynamic and effective, ultimately leading to greater fluency.
Exactly, Priya. Diversifying your study methods is key to maintaining a dynamic learning process. When you use multiple resources, you challenge your brain in different ways, which is essential for deep understanding and retention. One tool might be fantastic for vocabulary building, while another might excel at improving your listening comprehension or speaking skills. For example, using a well-reviewed app can provide interactive exercises, but pairing it with watching movies or series on Netflix can help you grasp the natural rhythm and flow of everyday English. Each resource offers unique insights into the language, from idiomatic expressions to cultural references, that a single method might miss. The goal is to create a well-rounded approach where you're not only learning the rules, but also seeing how they apply in various contexts. This kind of varied practice will help you adapt to different speaking environments and better understand diverse accents. By integrating several learning tools, you continuously refresh your study routine, keeping it both exciting and effective. Remember, flexibility in your learning strategy is one of the best ways to achieve long-term fluency.
I couldn't agree more, Ryan. Embracing a multi-method approach not only prevents boredom, but also enriches your overall understanding of English. When you stick with just one resource, you limit yourself to a narrow perspective, and that can slow down your progress. On the other hand, when you experiment with various tools, like engaging with free English learning resources online, trying out the best apps to learn English, or even watching movies and series on Netflix, you expose yourself to the language in different forms and contexts. Each method adds a new dimension to your learning experience, making it easier to pick up on nuances, intonation, and colloquial expressions. This variety not only deepens your language skills, but also keeps you motivated by continuously challenging you in fresh ways. It's about breaking free from the confines of a single learning method and embracing a diverse array of techniques that collectively enhance your ability to communicate naturally. By exploring multiple avenues, you can tailor your study sessions to meet your evolving needs, ensuring that every aspect of your language development is well covered. So, step out of your comfort zone and let a range of resources guide you towards greater fluency and confidence in English.
Let's wrap up our discussion with the final red flag: neglecting accent and pronunciation training. Many learners overlook this important aspect, thinking that once you know the vocabulary and grammar, you're all set. But in reality, ignoring accent training can lead to unclear speech and frequent misunderstandings. When you don't focus on your accent, even the most well-structured sentences can end up sounding awkward or hard to understand. This can make it challenging to connect with native speakers or even convey your ideas effectively in everyday conversation. Incorporating dedicated practices like English pronunciation tips and regular sessions of English accent training into your routine can make a huge difference. It's not just about sounding correct, but also about building your confidence and ensuring that your message is delivered clearly. Consider recording yourself, mimicking native speakers, or even practicing tongue twisters. These techniques help refine your pronunciation over time. When you invest time in accent training, you start to notice improvements not only in how you sound, but also in how naturally you can engage in conversations. It transforms your learning experience, making your spoken English more fluid and easier to understand for everyone you interact with.
Absolutely, Ryan. I've seen many learners who focus solely on vocabulary and grammar, only to struggle during real conversations because their accent holds them back. Neglecting accent training means you might never fully bridge the gap between textbook English and the lively, dynamic language used in everyday situations. This often leads to repeated misunderstandings or the need for constant clarification, which can be frustrating both for you and the listener. By regularly practicing English accent training, you not only polish your pronunciation, but also get used to the natural rhythm and intonation of English. Simple habits like mimicking short clips from movies, using online resources for English pronunciation tips, or even engaging in language exchange sessions can boost your confidence significantly. The goal is to make your speech sound more natural and less mechanical, so that you can express yourself with ease. As you refine your accent, you'll find that your overall communication skills improve dramatically, and you'll be able to speak with clarity and assurance in various contexts, whether at work, social gatherings, or casual chats.
Taking it further, it's important to understand that accent and pronunciation training aren't just about sounding like a native speaker. They're about ensuring that your message is understood without effort. When you neglect this part of your learning, you risk developing a communication barrier where even the right words can get lost in translation due to unclear pronunciation. One effective strategy is to incorporate daily exercises that focus specifically on your speaking clarity. For instance, using apps or online tools that offer English pronunciation tips can provide targeted feedback, helping you adjust your speech in real time. Additionally, dedicating a few minutes each day to English accent training by shadowing native speakers can enhance your listening and mimicry skills simultaneously. This dual approach not only improves your accent, but also instills a sense of rhythm and flow in your speech. Over time, as you practice consistently, you'll notice a significant reduction in miscommunications and a boost in your overall confidence. Remember, clarity in communication is key to effective language use, and taking the time to focus on your pronunciation will pay off in every conversation you have.
I completely agree, Ryan. It's crucial to view accent training as an integral part of your language journey rather than an optional extra. When your speech is clear and well-pronounced, it opens doors to more natural interactions and helps you feel more at ease in various settings. Embracing English pronunciation tips and engaging in English accent training not only refines your spoken language, but also enhances your listening skills by attuning your ear to the subtle differences in sounds. A practical tip is to make use of multimedia resources. Listening to podcasts, watching movies, and even participating in virtual conversation clubs can provide you with the exposure you need to internalize these patterns. Over time, this consistent practice ensures that your spoken English is both confident and comprehensible, reducing the chances of misunderstandings. As you integrate these techniques into your daily routine, you'll start to notice that your ability to express ideas becomes more fluid, and your overall communication skills strengthen. Ultimately, investing in your accent and pronunciation is investing in your ability to connect with others effectively, making every conversation smoother and more enjoyable.
As we conclude today's episode on the 9 red flags that might be hindering your English learning, remember that every challenge we've discussed offers an opportunity for improvement. From maintaining a consistent practice schedule to balancing grammar drills with real-life conversation, each red flag is a signpost guiding you toward more effective methods. By addressing issues like translating in your head, limited listening practice, and neglecting accent training, you're taking active steps to enhance your fluency and confidence. Keep experimenting with different strategies, whether it's using innovative apps, engaging in daily interactions, or practicing pronunciation, because the journey to mastering English is all about finding the right balance for you. Thank you for joining us on Speak Up today. Stay tuned for more tips and discussions to help you speak English confidently and naturally.